I wanted to tell you about a new podcast from HRN. It's called Fed by Blue, and it explores the transformative power of water, showing how the ocean can serve as a sanctuary, a source of renewal, an important source of food, and a profound tool for the fight against nutritional injustice. I'm your host, Jennifer Bushman, Executive Director of Fed by Blue, a nonprofit working to highlight the role of responsibly sourced foods from water in the shaping of the future of our world's foods, and the executive producer of Impact for the James Beard and Emmy-nominated PBS docuseries Hope in the Water. In the show, I'll be sharing behind-the-scenes stories, personal reflections, and interviews with incredible people who bring this work to life. We'll also dive into the science, the psychology, and the magic of the water itself, and how it's playing an urgently needed role in the future of food, one wave at a time. Whether you're a longtime ocean lover or simply just curious about the life-changing potential of nature's most powerful source, this podcast is for you. So join me as we explore the stories of resilience, courage, and transformation, and discover just how much hope can be found in the water. Find Fed by Blue wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
There are a lot of things to love about Palomo Mezcal Artisanal. My friend, Carlos Mendez Blas, makes Palomo Mezcal by cooking his agaves underground, milling those cooked agaves with a horse-pulled stone wheel, fermenting that in open-air wooden barrels and distilling it in wood-fired copper pot stills, the same way his great-great-grandparents made it more than a century ago. You'll also love it because it tastes like it was made more than a century ago. It tastes like history. So reach back in time and grab a bottle of Palomo Mezcal Artisanal. Great in cocktails, great on its own.
Hey, Gringex Chicagoans. I'm Linda from Cena Secreto. If you are in the neighborhood, you should look up Cena Secreto on Instagram. See if I'm hosting any dinners or tastings upcoming. Can't wait to see ya. Seyna Secreto. Secret with an O.
Agave Road Trip. Agave Road Trip.
I'm Lou Bank.
I'm Linda Sullivan.
And this is Agave Road Trip, critically acclaimed award-winning podcast that helps Gringex bartenders, bitters, and agaves,
Spirits.
and rural
Mexico.
Okay, so following up on last week's episode, which took place about less than a minute ago for
right
us,
here in the same mobile studio.
You know, I want to continue that conversation about the impact that we as Mezcal geeks have or can have or are having without even realizing it.
All of the tenses.
Yeah, on rural Mexico. Very tense.
We're very tense. White knuckling the mic.
So, you know, I feel like this previous episode, the focus was more on the damage that we're doing, even in light of the benefits.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So let's talk about the casual mezcal consumer who's not the geek and try to put that into perspective, right? So
this will be... right, obviously, this will be a different perspective. That's why we're recording it. The geeks are more live in a space of more both and physically, where we visit the spaces and we have an influence in person there, and then we also use our dollars to drink the juice.
Right.
So
right.
the casual
Very difference.
Right. That's a big one. We're going to kind of remove the in-person. The casual mezcal drinker has not typically been to the kind of rural Mexico trip to a palenque or taberna that where the juice is made. They're drinking it more here in the U.S.
Yeah, maybe they went to an all-inclusive in Cancun and said they were in Mexico.
That could be true. Although, in a lot of those cases, they're drinking tequila.
Yeah.
But even so, okay.
Well, so I've got this quote from Jaime Navarro at Gracias a Dios.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, Gracias a Dios Mezcal. He's also got a brand of whiskey coming in that I'm so excited about, Juan del Campo.
Fun. Have you tasted it already?
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh, good.
That's a
Bring it
different
in,
episode.
Jaime.
But let me run this quote that has nothing to do with the whiskey and everything to do with the mezcal.
Okay.
When my dad started producing mezcal, that was the way everyone was doing agriculture over here. Suddenly, everybody changed because everybody wanted to be more efficient, because the market, it's asking every time to be more efficient, and not only in the soil, in cost efficient. Everybody wants a better mezcal, but cheaper mezcal. How can you do that? It's incredible. So we decided, when we saw where mezcal was going, we decided that we were never going to be able to actually compete with some other brands. So we say, you know what? Let's keep doing what we have been doing. This is a niche project. We're going to be, even though we have a huge importer in the US, we don't have that much capacity to produce mezcal. We have been doing it the same way in the last 10 years.
Okay, I love that, Jaime. I mean, they made a choice. Here's our category. See you later, all casual mezcal drinkers.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a hard choice to make.
Well, it's sort of. I would say that, yes, in essence, Jaime is turning down dollars or pesos.
I think it's, I often think the choices mezcaleras make are brave. I think it's brave to say, I know and am confident enough in my understanding of my product and the values that go along with that. For example, like wanting or not wanting to change a detail to be more efficient, to appease the masses type of thing. He's saying, okay, I see all that, and that is not a fit for me. I think I admire that.
Yeah, no, I do too. And it's funny. So the conversation I had with Jaime, to me, was a surprise conversation. Like, I never imagined I would be seeking out Jaime from Gracias a Dios for an interview, because if I was going to talk to somebody from Santiago Matatlan, I've got my friend Carlos Mendez Blas, and I feel like Matatlan's one thing, and I can explain it one way.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Right. Uh-huh. So this is, and I'm, in case this is not clear, and I'm pointing out my prejudices and biases. And because when I think of Matatlan, I think large production mezcal. Now, having said that, and we've had this conversation before, even if you look at Matatlan production, if you set aside Zignum and maybe one other that I'm not 100% certain of, so I'm not going to name them, it's still far more artisanal than any whiskey, than any... Right?
It's like the brush there was too broad to say, I already know the style of Matatlan.
Well, right, and in essence, I'm also painting them with a brush of sort of selling out. Selling out isn't the right way to say it, but commodifying.
Yeah. The concept selling out sort of came into my mind when you were...
Yeah, but literally commodification. And here, Jaime had an opportunity to commodify and didn't. But, this again to me comes back to that idea of, okay, so what's the impact that we're having? To your point, Jaime and his family, his father, had to make a decision. And that decision was forced by, in essence, the behavior of these very casual mezcal consumers. Right? So if the consumer of everything was to appreciate, how this can of coffee was made, what was the cost to the community of growing these beans, harvesting these beans in that very specific way that you have to for good coffee, right? Is you have to gently take each cherry off of the bush so that it doesn't burst, so that you're doing a very proper fermentation. Like, there's all of these steps that we tend to not understand as we just buy 4 cans of cold coffee from Dark Matter.
Right.
But at least with Dark Matter, like, I know those guys and I know how much money they pay, which is way beyond fair trade. And I pay a ton of money for that coffee when they don't just give it to me. They didn't this time.
You're sort of saying the parallel I'm seeing is that Dark Matter has also, in a way, made the choice to serve the niche community instead of the normies. Now, I'm sure there are casual coffee drinkers that go to dark matter, right?
Yeah.
There's nuance. There's nuance here.
Yeah.
But a lot of casual coffee drinkers, I suspect, will choose not to go there because they're just casual. They're not putting their brain into it. They're not trying to buy coffee that is sourced this or that way.
Dunkin' Donuts, I can get it for $1
Exactly,
or whatever
right?
they charge.
This is more expensive. I don't want it. So in a way, dark matter is also saying what we do is niche. Let's keep making the thing for the niche folks. If some casual normies, straggle in, that's okay. Jaime's saying the same thing. I'm going to make something for the niche folks, not really for the casual folks.
And yet, it's this brand, Gracias a Dios, that's, I would say, largely not seen as for the niche folks. It's seen as sort of I think, I'm saying this is how I see it, I guess, realistically. But when you think, have you seen Gracias a Dios at bars?
Yes. I'm not that familiar with it as a brand.
Right. And why aren't you?
There's a lot of reasons for it. What you want me to say is that, I drink different, more expensive mezcal, right? Because I'm a nerd.
Kind of,
That's what you want me to say. But I've not selected to not participate in the Gracias a Dios stream of revenue. I've just never been exposed to it and tasted something that grips me on to the producer.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. Do they have a cocktail price driven bottle?
It's higher than the average cocktail price, but it's not super high. I want to say, if my numbers are going to be antiquated.
40 or something on the Benny shelf?
Yeah, 40, 45, something like that.
So that's a little higher. You typically want something that's under $30 at Benny's, and then your cost, if you're thinking of restaurant terms, that will be cheap enough, air quotes, cheap enough to budget for, an ounce and a half in a cocktail.
Unless you're a bar that is serving the kind of people who would drink dark matter coffee.
Yep.
And therefore they want to pay a little bit more because they want to feel like, okay,
totally.
I'm not.
So, but wait, there's a rub here that Jaime is choosing from the quote to appeal more to the casual people, but you're telling me Gracias a Dios really doesn't appeal to the casual people. It's kind of priced out.
Well, it appeals to, look, I'm making so many broad assumptions here.
So
right?
many.
Right, but I think it's an assumption about the market as a whole more than Gracias a Dios as a single brand or Santiago Matatlan even as a production site. I think what I'm trying to say here is that even within the spectrum of mindless consumption, right? It's not one thing.
Or unintentional, kind of non-specific.
Yeah. I mean, when I say thoughtless, it sounds like an insult.
Yes.
And it sounds like, but I don't mean it that way. I mean, it's, so many of the things that I consume thoughtlessly.
Sure.
I mean, not that I dislike them, but, my favorite restaurant currently is Chengdu Bistro over on North Avenue. Beautiful Szechuan food, right?
Yeah.
And I love the food there. The people who work there are great. They know me. They see my name come in on an order online. They don't have, their website for ordering online isn't as robust as I'd like it to be.
Sure.
So you can't say gluten-free and vegan, right? But they see my name and they know, that's Lou. He's gluten-free and vegan.
That's cute.
Right? And so, I love this place. And it's a very specific relationship that I have with them. I don't know where they source their ingredients.
Right.
And so, I feel like there's this spectrum of consideration for how we're consuming and what we're consuming.
Yeah.
And I feel like Jaime and Gracias a Dios falls somewhere in there at a higher level than I had anticipated because I'm biased, prejudiced in a way that's unfair to Santiago Matatlan as a whole. But I feel like the fact that Jaime has that issue, that problem, is only because there is such a thing as this thoughtless consumption. And so, to get back to sort of what I think is the kernel of this episode and the previous episode is, the damage that we do as Mezcal geeks here's the damage that is done because somebody's not a mezcal geek, because they're just sort of like, I hear mezcal's good, and they're getting a cocktail.
Right.
And maybe I hear mezcal's good. I want the good stuff. I'm going to go to the place with the slightly more expensive mezcal cocktails. And so, okay, Jaime benefits from that.
Sure.
And I would argue, as a result, Oaxaca benefits from that because it's less of the churn and burn. How quickly can we grow the espadín, right?
Right. If casual folks, are drinking an artisanal mezcal instead of maybe a more industrial agave spirit of any kind, that's Jaime's wheelhouse.
Yeah, I think so. And I guess that's to say maybe what I'm saying
TBD
is that, okay, if you're going to be casual about your consumption, pay more, and maybe you're paying more for nothing, right? Maybe it's just nonsense. But maybe in paying more, if you happen to be paying more to somebody like a Gracias a Dios or somebody like a dark matter coffee, maybe in fact you are doing less harm, more good than you would be otherwise.
Well, I would say so for many reasons, but for one, based on our value of putting our money into that more artisan-driven rural community.
Well, yes, but.
Yes, and Chicago.
No, this is definitely a yes, but. Like, this brings me back to, again, an anecdote that I'm pretty sure I've shared in previous episodes, where in 2002, I was hired by Rogue Ales to run their marketing, and they decided, Jack, the owner at the time, decided it was marketing to start a distillery. So it was my job to start the distillery, and then he decided it was marketing to make rum, so then I had to make rum. And like, the only thing I ever did that made him happy, that he thought was good, that I'd earned my salary, was he'd been harping on me week after week after week, month after month after month after I'd started the project to get the rum into distribution in Oregon. Okay. So he shows up at the offices on a Monday, as he did, and he say, "Hey, Lil B, are we in distribution in Oregon yet?" And constantly after months of saying no, I said yes. And he said, "How could you have done that?" And it's like, "You've been telling me to do this." I said, no, how could you possibly know what to price it at? And I said, oh, Jack, calm down. So I took the catalog from the local distributor. I looked at all of the rums. I found the most expensive one, and I added $2. And he said, "Oh yeah, no, that's good. That's good.
Backwards math."
Yeah. That works. I like that. My point being, there's a point at which people in marketing recognize if you price it a little higher, there's a category of people. Actually, I think most people would assume it's better. And there's a category that will say, I want the better, and will be willing to pay it. And then jackasses like me use that to confuse the consumer to thinking that they're buying something better, and better these days, at least, maybe not in 2002, though I think in 2002, translates to something that is less intrusive on the environment.
Yeah. So this concept is interesting. You're like signaling with the price that this is good, and assuming that sort of trick, you're not assuming, because it has worked in many anecdotes, but assuming that trick is going to work to communicate to the consumer, the casual consumer, this is a little better. Want to impress your friends? Pay this $10.
Right. And the better, better is a word that you define personally.
Everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so ambiguous.
So much.
Maybe it means it's better for the environment. Maybe it means it's more delicious. Maybe it means that they took extra care. Maybe. Right. Well, I think again, to get back to Chuck Klosterman, was that this episode or the previous episode?
I don't remember.
Okay. Anyway.
Gotta catch them all, you guys.
I think the conclusion is, everything matters and you don't know how it matters. That doesn't mean you throw your hands up and you don't try. Because I think, in fact, maybe this is the point, is the important part is to try.
I think so. I like that, actually.
Yeah, it reminds me of that whole Nietzsche thing, right? Where you relive your life over and over again, constantly, or I guess, maybe Groundhog's Day is a better reference. Yeah. Where you constantly try to do a little bit better to come to the conclusion that you want, though ultimately maybe you never reach that conclusion, but it's the trying that matters.
I actually really like that rap, because I do think not even in this category that trying matters.
Yeah.
Right. If you're trying, think of, I don't know, different parental content over the years of great job, you did it, or just great job, you're working really hard.
Yeah.
I think there's a concept that agrees with that in other categories too, not just this industry. So yeah. I like that for a rap. Let's try, y'all.
Yeah, and maybe you and I could try to work hard at some point.
Okay, let's do it. I'll commit to that.
Okay, Linda, I'll catch you next episode.
Hasta luego.
You've been listening to Agave Road Trip, the critically acclaimed award-winning podcast that helps Gringex bartenders better understand agave spirits, and rural Mexico. We're blessed with sound engineering by Roy Sierra and a theme song performed by Gabriel Oliveira and Marco Ricos. Sign up to become a road tripper and listen to more episodes at agaveroadtrip.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, please let us know. And if you hated it, well, I'm sure you'll let us know that too. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Agave Road Trip. Agave Road Trip is a production of 10 Angry Pit Bulls, Inc. Agave Road Trip is powered by Simplecast. Thank you for listening to Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is food radio supported by you. For our freshest content, subscribe to our newsletter. To subscribe to the Heritage Radio newsletter, enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with Heritage Radio Network on Instagram and Twitter at heritage_radio. You can also find Heritage Radio Network at facebook.com/Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization using the power of educational storytelling about food to build a more equitable, resilient food system. Heritage Radio Network couldn't do that without support from listeners like you. Become a part of the world's most innovative community today. Subscribe to the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join the Heritage Radio Network family by becoming a member. To become a member of the Heritage Radio Network, click on the beating heart of our homepage. Heritage Radio Network can become addictive. Programming you hear on Heritage Radio Network might lead you to eat, drink, and listen to more programming on Heritage Radio Network. If you drink, please do not drink and drive. Drink responsibly, drive responsibly, eat responsibly too, and listen to Heritage Radio Network responsibly. To listen to Heritage Radio Network responsibly, wear protective earbuds. While wearing protective earbuds, do not drive, do not walk either. Sit in a comfortable chair. If that comfortable chair has a hard seat, please remember to stretch every 30 minutes. If you stretch every 30 minutes, please stay within your defined stretching capacity. And consult a doctor who specializes in stretching. If you don't have a doctor, maybe Dr. Ryan Acock, the Cocktail MD, can help you out. Thanks for listening. Agave Road Trip out.
I'm Katie Osuna, and I'm the host of Copper and Heat Radio, a 2-time James Beard Award-winning podcast about the forces that shape our meals. I started this podcast back in 2019 when I was working in Michelin-starred restaurants and noticing all of these social interactions around me. I had a lot of questions about the culture of restaurants and the systems we operated in.
I think the restaurant world's in for a reckoning.
Restaurants are slow to change because everything's made on the smallest margins.
Value is completely arbitrary, right?
What began as a podcast to process my way through working in kitchens as a woman has grown.
If the conversation is a crackdown on the border, then do you want a $30 burger? Because that's one of the consequences of this.
There's just a certain financial reality to making certain businesses exist. And there's a reason that delivery didn't exist in a lot of markets for a lot of years. And it's because it's incredibly low margin.
How a cuisine climbs in prestige and value. This happened to Japanese cuisine. This happened to Italian cuisine right in front of our eyes.
Listen wherever you get your podcasts. And now on Heritage Radio Network.